The Bermuda Triangle has long been a location of mystery and the unsolved disappearances, including ships, people, and aircraft, for over a century. But what is it about that stretch of the Atlantic Ocean that has caused so much controversy? We will examine one famous incident that has still not been solved, and one that tragically took the lives of many good young American men after World War II. What was Flight 19? What are the perceived contributing factors to their disappearance? What are the known facts? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. On December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers called Sign Flight 19 took off from Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on a routine 3-hour training mission. Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, who had amassed some 2,500 hours flying, in addition to the completion of a combat tour in the Pacific Theater during World War II, was the flight leader. The flight included both Navy and Marine airmen, with each Avenger, with one exception, carrying a standard 3-man crew. They were to take off at 14:10 hours and navigate heading east to the Hens and Chicken Shoals for a training bombing exercise, then turn north towards Grand Bahama Island, and then head southwest, returning to Fort Lauderdale. Their flight plan was as follows. 1. Depart 26 degrees, 3 minutes north and 80 degrees, 7 minutes west, and fly 91 degrees, distance 56 miles to Hen and Chicken Shoals to conduct low-level bombing. After bombing, continue on course 91 degrees for 67 miles, fly course 346 degrees, distance 73 miles, and then fly course 241 degrees, distance 120 miles, then returning to U.S. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The flight reached the target area at 14:30 and dropped their practice bombs and then banked on their new heading. Suddenly, an unexpected heavy cloud cover and high winds and rain blew in. What has survived from the radio transmission records, it would appear that Taylor became convinced that his Avenger's compass was malfunctioning and that his planes had been flying in the wrong direction. Another pilot flying in the area near the Florida coast, Navy flight instructor Lieutenant Robert F. Cox, received patrol's transmissions. He informed the Naval Air Station of the situation and then responded to Flight 19 asking if they needed assistance. Taylor responded, "Both my compasses are out and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down." Another transmission heard was one of the pilots in Flight 19 stating, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." Then the situation became more confusing. Ground control knew that he had made the last turn on his heading, but it appeared that Taylor believed that his flight had drifted hundreds of miles off course and that he was around the Florida Keys. One prevailing belief was that Taylor, who had just returned to the area, was confusing the Bahama Islands with the Keys, but still dead reckoning would have assisted him and the flight. Generally, pilots in the area, if they became lost, were instructed to head due west toward the east coast, but it appeared that Taylor believed that they were over the Gulf of Mexico because it is suspected that he turned the flight northeast, which would take them farther out into open ocean. Some of his pilots seem to have recognized that he was making a mistake, as over the radio the call was heard, "Damn it, if we would just fly west, we would get home." Taylor turned around and headed west, but shortly after 1800 hours he canceled the order and once again changed direction. He must have still believed that he was still in the Gulf of Mexico. Over the radio, he was heard, "We didn't go far enough east. We may as well just turn around and go east again." In the post-event investigation, it was believed that one Avenger broke formation and flew in a different direction, but most followed their commander's lead. Flight 19's transmissions soon became weaker as they flew farther out to sea. With their fuel almost exhausted, Taylor was again heard over the radio. "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." This would apparently have been Taylor preparing Flight 19 to crash land in the ocean, and right afterward, Flight 19's radio communications ended. Search aircraft were sent to the area to locate the men. One inexplicable factor was why Flight 19 never engaged the rescue radio frequency or their ZBX receivers, their IFF, or identification friend or foe, which the pilots were instructed to do, which would have given them a signal beacon and could have led them towards the Navy's land-based radio towers. The only explanation was that they never heard that transmission. At any rate, they never acknowledged that they received it. At 19:30 hours, 2 PBM Martin Mariner flying boats departed Fort Lauderdale on different flight paths to cover a wider search area. One of these planes, PBM-5, Bureau number 59225, took off from Naval Air Station Banana River in Brevard County, Florida, at 19:27 hours, carrying a crew of 13 rescue personnel. About 20 minutes later, that Mariner was tracking Flight 19's last known course correction, also disappeared from radar and lost radio transmission with NAS Fort Lauderdale. Now, with another aircraft missing, confusion reigned at NAS Fort Lauderdale. The following morning, before dawn, the Navy launched over 300 boats and ships to start a wide search pattern. The Martin Mariner, being prone to in-flight fires due to a faulty fuel tank and fuel line design, was believed to have possibly exploded. In fact, a passing merchant ship reported a fireball and then discovered an oil slick on the ocean surface. The search spanned 5 days, covering over 300,000 square miles of ocean without any trace of either the Marines, Navy pilots, or the Avengers. They just vanished, Navy Lieutenant David White later recalled. "We had hundreds of planes out looking, and we searched over land and water for days, and nobody ever found the bodies or any debris." As was standard practice, a Navy Board of Investigation was convened. The board concluded that, although Taylor might have confused the Bahamas for the Florida Keys after his compass malfunctioned, it could find no clear explanation for why Flight 19 had become so disoriented. The board's final report was that if all the aircraft had headed due west, they would have saved the air crews when they ditched, as all the aircraft had inflatable life rafts. The conclusion reached was that the loss to all aircraft were due to causes or reasons unknown. Over the decades, speculation and conspiracy theories have erupted as to what happened. Everything from aliens abducting the men to their entering a parallel world and magnetic anomalies were provided, the latter which has been experienced by ships and planes in that area. Popular culture also gave its own explanation, such as the 1977 film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which had Flight 19 being abducted by flying saucers and then dropped into a Mexican desert. Everyone connected to the flight, such as the meteorologist and pre-flight briefing staff, stated that Taylor arrived late for the meeting and asked to be excused from this training mission, saying, "I just don't want to take this one out." Perhaps he was not feeling well or did not feel able to fly for an unknown reason. It was also believed that he was possibly unfit for duty and possibly even suffering from post-traumatic stress due to his combat service. The simplest answer is that Taylor, in the lead aircraft, did in fact have a compass problem, and the rest of the flight that stayed with him, with the exception to one pilot who broke off and headed west, but being low on fuel by that time, would have also had to ditch, as all the aircraft would have been out of fuel by 2000 hours. One very odd situation occurred when an attorney named Graham Stiglither located what was possibly a crashed Avenger and the remains of the air crew while hunting in the swamps in 1963. He stated that the remains of the crew were still on board when he placed a call to a friend in the Pentagon. He was then told to drop the case, and there was no record of a follow-up investigation. The mystery seemed to have been solved again in 1991 when a group of treasure hunters diving on a possible wreck found the remains of 5 Avengers off Fort Lauderdale, but subsequent investigation proved that these were not the aircraft from Flight 19 due to the confirmation of the aircraft serial numbers. But while the search continues to this day, no definitive signs of the 6 aircraft or their 27 crewmen have ever been found. What is more extraordinary is that the case was closed permanently without being left open to possible research and investigation. All 14 men of Flight 19 and the 13 men aboard the missing Mariner have never been located, hence creating one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.